The 12-month deer agenda. That's what we're going to be talking about today, guys. I see a lot of videos and different things out there where people are considering month to month and what they should be doing. I think a lot of us end up getting stressed out. We're not sure how to be prepared. It's hard to keep it all in our heads, and even month to month, because we all know that at some point, especially with delivery times in today's day and age and things running out of stock, you got to be a little bit more prepared. So what helped me is kind of laying out a 12-month guideline, and I hope it helps you guys. And I'm going to talk a little bit about at the end about a way we could do that. So I want to run through each month and kind of what our plans are on the farm, lay it out for the year. Obviously some things are specific just to me, some might not be pertinent to you, and vice versa. There's things I'm sure I could add. This is really my first time doing this. I've already caught one mistake, so I'm already glad that I am putting all this down on the whiteboard here and can continually update and change it as the year goes on. But I feel a lot better with doing this. Gives me a chance to really see what's coming, what I need to purchase to be ready, and so on. So we'll start up here in January. I'm sorry if you can't read that too well, but I will zoom in and again talk about a little later how you guys can get this as well, and so don't feel like you need to take notes or anything the whole time or for each month. So in January, I have clearing access paths. You saw my previous videos. Obviously we're in January and February, guys, so most of what you're seeing is types of timber stand improvement and other things that can be done, because we're going to be busier when it gets to March, April, May, June, and the summer months. And I try and spread these out as well. So not everything on here needs to be in that month, but I also thought about kind of spreading things throughout the year to just make it easy on us. Many of you may live on your hunting property, but we don't, so I try and drive there once a week or whatever is feasible during that time. So clearing access paths without the leaves and everything is a little bit easier. You might have seen the video on the forestry mulcher I had out, or when I talked a little bit about that when we prepped for it with the flags and things like that. Defining stand locations, defining travel corridors and trees to cut. Of course, when you guys are looking at travel corridors and things like that, you got to know what stands or where you might put new stands, because they should be coming in within shooting distance, especially if you're an archery hunter. So you kind of have to have an idea a little bit earlier in the game when you do that. Gathering firewood, building a bridge, those are specific to me. I know that, where we're walking in, we want it to be more open timber, right? You don't want deer bedding right where you're going to be walking in. So the trees that we took down near the access, we will of course have a different purpose for. If we want to take it out, cut it up into firewood, great. If not, you could leave it there as well. And the bridge, which I went over briefly in that, I believe travel corridor prep video, simple bridge we built. So I'll probably take that off, of course, for next year. Soil tests. So in the beginning of the year, obviously a great time to prepare for things coming up. To do that soil test, get it out of the way. I don't know if we'll do it every year. We did it last year, maybe every other year or something like that, and go from there. So going into February, planting switchgrass in early February. I don't want to put it on snow, but I also want it to be cold enough to where we're having a lot of freeze and thaw cycles, and the seed can get down into the ground, pretty well, especially by the time June comes around. Felling trees, canopy trees, and hinge cut for bedding pockets and access and travel corridors. I'll talk about this more in future videos, but the first thing is obviously the sunlight. I know this is in quite a few videos, but you can't have, and I've mentioned it, hinge cut trees that aren't going to get enough light and are going to die after a year or two. So that's first. On top of that, we do that first because we don't want these large trees falling right on top of the hinge cuts we just made. They could easily, especially hinge cut trees being 4, 5, 8, however many inches big, they're gonna most likely crush them. And that would really stink because you can't really fix that. So felling those canopy trees, getting all the big ones done first, and then lastly going into hinge. The bedding pockets, again, we won't go in too much, but either a star pattern or layering or depending on the property and where we're putting it. And then access and travel corridors. I'm going to do these least and probably last because I would rather have those cut trees closer to where the deer are bedding. I want them as far as from the access paths that we're walking as possible. Obviously, we might still kind of screen with hinge cuts near our access and stuff, but at the same time, I do not want deer bedding near the access, so it might just be one or two here and maybe an open spot, kind of going with the flow, and most of that cutting being on the travel corridor and where we want the deer bedding. Don't want too many of those cuts where we're walking in. Coming into March, simazine for the switchgrass, a few weeks before spring green up. Of course, we hear that all the time. So kind of that late March, especially for the Midwest, is what we're looking at. 2 to 3 quarts. I did read that in the more sandy soils, you don't need as much, I believe, because it gets down a little quicker. So we're going to stick to 2 quarts this year, especially since some of you know about our mishap with too much simazine during our practice phase last year with switchgrass. Finishing any wooded cuts, hinge cuts, things like that. Realistically, guys, especially if you're doing something like a large makeover like we are, we have a ton to cut. And as I make some videos, you might even get sick of it by then, but at the same time, we got to do it in order. I'm showing you guys exactly how I do it in this order, and then also at the end of the year how things turned out. So we're probably going to also be working on that some into March, really 3 months of work on different trees to get all done what we want to. And then lastly, kind of possibly start with the fertilizer and lime. If we get your soil results back from your soil test and you know what you need to put down, spring is a good time because that added moisture can really help it get into the ground, and it gives it some time so that if you do fall plantings, some of that should be worked in there by then. April, we're doing quite a few young trees. It was much cheaper to get the 12 to 18 inch type trees, spruce, things like that, Austrian pine, those are our main 2. And since they're so young, one, we're picking them up in April. I want to get them into the ground right away. It's going to be 4, 5, 6 years until they're really doing a lot for us, but a couple $100 versus a couple thousand is saving a lot of money, and I want to get them in as soon as possible. So we're going to pick those up and we're going to try and plant them in the spring, get those roots going as much of the year as we can. Purchasing our buckwheat. I didn't put purchases on here for everything, but some things that are important, like different seeds and stuff, I'll try and throw some reminders on here, just because, again, I got to worry about shipping costs or where I'm picking it up, what's in stock, and so on. So a little reminder, that'll be about 50 pounds an acre. The 17th here in Michigan, turkey season opens, so I'd like to throw that on there, plan some trips. Also a great time to take new hunters out, teach them the ropes, show them a little bit, where you can be a little bit more mobile and different things like that might not get bored as easy as sitting there for deer season. And hopefully later in the turkey season a little bit warmer as well. And then 2 to 3 weeks after green up, we're going to start the second spraying, which will be 2,4-D and glyphosate. 2 quarts glyphosate, 1 pint of 2,4-D. So I try and time things basically in that 4 months or so apart. The other reason why I'm squeezing it in those times is because in May here we're going to have another spraying, and that needs to be done before June, when any switchgrass and other things start to bud and whatnot. Because we don't want to kill that by spraying it too late. So really, late March, late April, and then late May, going into May here, we're going to do another spraying of just 2 quarts glyphosate, no 2,4-D this time, and really make sure we get a good kill. Maybe do a little bit of weed whipping or mowing if we really have to, if we miss some spots and things like that, and get ready for the switchgrass to start sprouting in June. Also in May, clethodim. That's going to be, we have a little bit, some larger early successional growth areas where we'll have pockets where we'll do some of our planting, but kind of around there I'd like to spray some clethodim, which is going to be to get rid of some of the grasses we don't want. And then mow areas, like I just said, if need be. We really want to keep, especially stuff in the switchgrass, really weed free as much as possible. I also put in May installing water holes. That's also a great time, again, because of the moisture. Hopefully they're filling up some for you. Also, hopefully the ground is mostly unthawed by then, so might have purchasing water holes some in the previous months or something, but I don't think those will be too much out of stock and hard to get. Going into June, planting the buckwheat. Early June, we're gonna wait, remember, for that 7 to 8 weeks, I believe, for the buckwheat to grow before we're gonna crush it, spray, and plant again. So besides planting buckwheat, we're gonna also hinge and feather the field edges. Now, if you went back to my, not travel corridors, but prepping for our access and putting all the flags down, I talked a little bit about this. And my main point for this is we're waiting until June to do the feathering of the edges and those hinge cuts, because that second spraying, if you're doing borders and things like that with switchgrass around fields or something similar, if you put a bunch of trees in your way, you're going to have a hard time driving an ATV or UTV through to spray, especially if you're doing a large area. So we're going to hold off for that until June or so, and then again back into the woods, the chainsaw and everything, get that done as quick as possible. Going into July, starting a blind platform. Any blinds, other building, I don't want to wait till August, especially September, but definitely August, to get all this stuff done and making noise and things of that nature. So getting that situated, purchasing other food, whatever it's going to be, peas, brassicas, whatever, make sure you have that ready, because again, 7-8 weeks after that buckwheat has sprouted, we'll be looking to crush it and plant that. Fill water holes, anything the naturally that hasn't filled. I'm gonna bring some jugs, take it back there, fill them all up, get them ready for the season. Installing mock scrapes, same thing. Get those done, get the deer used to it. Remember, that is to essentially get the deer patterning the way you want, or as much as possible. Maybe getting rid of other mock scrapes that could be on the property that you know of that you don't really want the deer going to. And lastly, for July, installing stands and cutting shooting lanes. Especially last year, when we just started on the farm, putting out, I don't know, maybe 5-6 stands. I really underestimated how time consuming it can be to make things the way you want it. Cut everything, bring the gear out there, unless you have quite a bit of equipment. So want to get that going early. Ideally, guys, I know people say, maybe a month before the season opens, stay off of it. I really want to be as much as possible, because personally, I think if you're in that 40 to 80 acre, compartment, of course, a lot of variables could be in there, but for the most part, if you're going in there, you're making all that noise, you're chainsawing, you're doing that much work, you're for the most part busting everything off the property no matter what. Remember, that's not the same as walking around your access paths scentless as much as possible during the hunting season. This is going in, making a ton of noise, dropping trees. Yes, don't get me wrong, some deer could stay bedded, maybe just hidden if you're that far away, but for the most part, I think we're busting them out, and I want to be realistic. I want at least a month or more, no one really walking in at all. So I want to have everything set and done somewhere in August. So any of those heavy cuttings, getting the deer used to it, blinds up, getting them used to any shadows and new buildings and structures or whatever, get them used to that. I want to do it a little bit earlier this time. So again, some of those things could even be moved to May, June, things like that. But one, turkey season, and two, I wanted to spread it out as much as I could. So like I said, installing the mock scrapes, installing stands, and cutting shooting lanes. Going into August, making sure all of our trail cams are out, maybe changing up some of the batteries. Obviously, you'll probably have to change them again one time. And I want to touch a little bit on more of my experience with trail cameras. I know I had the first video, but cover a few new experiences that I've had. What else? Planting food, crushing the buckwheat, and spraying again over the buckwheat. So I'll be happy to get to that part, because that'll be like less than 5 acres that we're doing at that point in time. So hopefully things are rocking and rolling. But remember, you're going to leave your buckwheat, or if you're using a cover crop and doing a no-till, or like Jeff's method, you're going to plant into the buckwheat before you crush it, get those seeds to fall down, and then crush it, make sure everything gets down, and then spray after you crush it, make sure everything gets a good kill, the moisture's on the ground, and everything should come through nicely. Finish the blind installing for August, so I want to be done. Fix up any other stands that might need to get added support or whatever, ladders for blinds. And then the only time I'm going to probably step foot on September, unless I need to fix a camera or something like that, is planting rye, middle, maybe late. I think I did it on the 20th, on part of my food plot, planting that winter rye. So that is the only time, like I said, I'm probably going to set foot in September, and I'm going to still try and be pretty quiet, go out there with just a couple bags and the hand spreader, alone and knock that out. And then you can see, if you can read that, October, November, December, you know exactly what we'll be doing. So all this work goes towards that. And then I did throw a few notes down here. I'll probably keep it on something separate or whatever. Just you know, things we might forget, especially if you're like me and you're driving to the property. If you remember, if you forget the battery for your backpack spare or something like that, it's going to be very annoying, or you're going to be paying another $50 when you run to Lowe's or Home Depot or something to that effect. So I like to keep just a few notes running for the different trips and the different things. But I hope this is a pretty nice help for some of you. The semi-surprise that I wanted to try and do is making this a document so that you guys can download it and you can save it and you can add to it. Or I'm not exactly sure how I want to. I'm thinking of using maybe a Dropbox document that I can just leave open. Or maybe I can be the one that just does the edits for us. But as you guys see other things that you think should be added or moved, and you know, as we kind of go through the experience together, it's something that everyone can view and that I can adjust as we go. Or especially if there's some kind of mistake and next year we want to tweak things, which I'm sure for something we will. So that's kind of the plan. I'm going to get to work on putting this into like a Dropbox PDF, something to that effect, so you guys don't need to write it down, and if there's things on here that you liked, you can easily save it and access it anytime you want. So I hope that helps, guys. Again, I know January, February, March, lots of stuff in the woods, things like that, so if there's some repetition, I apologize. I am still going to go back and do more in-depth things on the travel corridors, on the hinge cuts, show you guys real-time examples of what I'm doing. I see a lot in the Facebook and different forums. I still, you know, a ton of questions everywhere about those topics because that's what everyone's doing. So I hope I don't get them to you too late, but at the same time, I got to go in order for this farm as well. And regardless, I hope they help. So if you like this, please give us a thumbs up. Think about subscribing so you can catch our next video, and we'll see you guys next time.